Just because you've never heard us crying doesn't mean we don't cry. Welcome everyone to Powered and Protected by Rainbows. I am of course your host, Matt Haslam, and today on the show we're covering why members of the LGBTQ community stay silent and don't speak up when they face discrimination, violence, or hate crimes in their communities. Now recently, Fox 56 News reported on our show's partnered initiative with the Pennsylvania Equality Project and SARC to protect members of the LGBTQ in Schuylkill County and in Pennsylvania by passing legislation called the Equality Act. That specific initiative is to get an Equality Act of Schuylkill County, or of Pennsylvania, which you can sign and share our petition using the link in the description of this video. In their November 21st news story, they asked Schuylkill County officials about the mountains of evidence of discrimination we presented to the county on November 13th, and the county's response was that they've never heard any LGBTQ person complain about discrimination in the county.
The county solicitor's office is currently looking into Haslam's proposal, which could take some time. They say they've never heard any LGBT people complain about discrimination.
They're not directly affected by this, and no one automatically thinks, let's go to our local lawmakers and get this passed.
But most counties in not just Pennsylvania, but in the country, are the same way. They don't know what problems our community faces because of a few key reasons. Now, we're going to be looking at Schuylkill County as our primary example here, but it should be noted that similar things occur across the country, with some counties doing a better job than others. The first reason is simple. Our elected officials hardly ever ask our community how we're doing or if we need help. Some critics might say this is because LGBTQ only make up about 10% of any region, and elected officials rely on a majority vote. But I don't think that's the case at all. One of the main arguments in opposition to things like the Equality Act is that we already have marriage equality now, so isn't that good enough? So to most politicians, our main goal has already been accomplished. I truly think anti-LGBTQ propaganda worked here, and our elected officials now think we've gotten what we wanted, and they forget our wedding day is far from the only day in our lives. So since 2015, they never ask us how we're doing or if we need help. Here locally, our elected officials are not LGBTQ, so without any representation in our county offices, we rely on those elected officials to be allies of ours. And that's not to say here locally our elected officials aren't allies, because they are. However, I'm a member of every LGBTQ club in Schuylkill County, and we don't have any elected officials reaching out to those clubs asking those questions. But to be fair, the second reason our elected officials don't know what's going on in our community is because we hardly ever reach out to them either. In some areas, this is vastly different, but here in Schuylkill County, our organizations or LGBTQ individuals don't reach out to our elected officials asking them for help near as often as we should. So we have no communication in either direction here. Now, as for why the LGBTQ doesn't reach out to our elected officials asking for help, it's pretty clear to see why. The main cause is fear. In 2014, Schuylkill County Register of Wills, Teresa Santai Gaffney, made national news by legally challenging the Pennsylvania court's decision to allow gay marriage. A federal court judge denied her case, but it's worth noting, since 2014, Teresa continued being reelected to Register of Wills and Clerk of Orphans Court in our county in 2019. This means we still have a homophobic woman leading the office which is in charge of adoptions, guardianship, and last wills of the deceased. And while she hasn't made news nationally since then, the county is fully aware they have homophobic people working for our county government. This means our community has ample evidence to fear the local government and fear speaking up about discrimination against us, because frankly, the county government itself has been a part of that discrimination. And since that case failed in 2014, the county has done nothing to reach out to our local LGBTQ clubs or community to counter this level of fear. The second reason we don't see every LGBTQ person in our county reaching out to the local elected officials asking for help is because there seems to be no one to call for help. As I've said before, I belong to every LGBTQ club in our county, and they have never even heard the name SARC. In 7 months of research by a team of LGBTQ activists working exclusively on LGBTQ efforts here in Schuylkill County, we never came across that name either. In fact, our county website doesn't even list their SARC program at all. Yet SARC is the only county-funded agency working at all on LGBTQ anti-discrimination efforts. SARC stands for Sexual Assault Resource and Counseling Center. So sexual assault is their main effort, but they do work on LGBTQ goals, and we have partnered with them now for all LGBTQ positive initiatives moving forward. But no one on our entire team even knew they existed until this past month after our campaign launched. So seeing that their exposure in the local LGBTQ community is so small, and because it's so hard to find them, let alone find out about the work that they do, it's hard to imagine a local LGBTQ person knowing their phone number when an act of discrimination occurs locally. And without filing the report with SARC, the county could be perfectly accurate in saying they never heard of discrimination happening here. And finally, the biggest reason LGBTQ people don't speak up to local elected officials is because that's exactly what we were always taught to do. While nowadays we have pride events and celebrate who we are and who we love, most of our lives is spent teaching us to shut up and internalize our problems. We're taught to think that if someone discriminates against us or violently beats us up, that it was our fault for flaunting our sexual orientation or gender identity by wearing a rainbow t-shirt or for holding hands with our boyfriend in public. We're taught that if we don't want trouble, we should just stay silent and not bring more attention to ourselves, which will lead to more hate getting sent our way. That's part of the reason back in 2015, the Pennsylvania Department of Health reported that LGBTQ people here in our area are more at risk to suicide than any other group of individuals. We have problems like everyone else does in our professional or our personal lives, but when it comes to discrimination, we internalize those problems as well and think those acts of discrimination were the fault of our own actions. Basically, we feel like we put a target on our own back by living freely, so why speak up when someone shoots an arrow at that target? Even hosting this very show, which has only ever spread love and acceptance, has sometimes been met with death threats, terrorist groups asking me to commit suicide live on the air, or when we cover a story of a trans person being murdered, we have comments from people legitimately saying the number of LGBTQ people who are murdered is far too low. Legally speaking, when we do speak up and ask for help from our government, there are no laws to protect us to charge criminals with in most discrimination cases. Sure, if someone assaults us or burns our flags, those could be charged with federal hate crimes. But in Schuylkill County, hate crimes aren't even investigated by the local police departments, so it makes the local LGBTQ community not have much faith or trust in not just the government, but the police. And even if the police investigate, some district attorneys don't want to charge suspects with crimes because they too are homophobic or transphobic. Just look at Manchester, Tennessee, where the DA doesn't want to charge domestic violence criminals in cases of gay marriage domestic violence because he doesn't believe homosexuals should be protected because their marriage isn't valid to him. And he doesn't want to charge harassment or manslaughter against the children who pushed a 16-year-old to commit suicide in September 2019 just because that teenager was bisexual. Even in civil court, LGBTQ have some major problems fighting cases of discrimination. Firstly, it costs thousands of dollars to fight in criminal court cases without getting help from organizations like ACLU. And even if they could somehow afford the legal battle, or get help from a group like ACLU, to take on a civil battle of discrimination is very difficult, especially considering the entity you might be taking on could be a hospital with a team of lawyers, a business who can claim religious freedom whenever it's convenient, or the government itself, which has much more influence and resources than you do. Or you could be taking on the court itself. So it's no wonder why LGBTQ people stay silent and don't speak up when they face discrimination. Every possible hurdle that could be put in front of a victim is put in front of them. And that's not even mentioning the public's belief in that act of discrimination occurring, or belief of that act of discrimination being justified. Even if a majority of people believe you that something happened, if you live in a homophobic or transphobic area like Schuylkill County, sadly most people will congratulate the person, the business, or the agency who discriminated against you. But that's why we don't speak up when something bad happens. The LGBTQ relies on groups like the Pennsylvania Equality Project, who reaches out to the local LGBTQ community and actually asks them what problems they face and asks them how we can help them out. And because we too are LGBTQ, they trust us more, and they are more forthcoming with their terrifying stories of discrimination. A county, a state, or a federal government will never hear what's happening in their LGBTQ community if they don't have representation in their elected offices. And if no LGBTQ representation is in our elected offices, at the very least, those offices need to have communication with their LGBTQ community and regularly ask them what problems they are facing and if they need help. So, if you want to know what's actually going on in the area, try reaching out to local LGBTQ clubs and ask if they're okay and if they need help. Or at the very least, take the opportunity when a group like ours approaches you as government elected officials. But anyway, that's all for our episode for today. If you have any thoughts on today's topic, have any questions or reasons you think we missed, please do leave those in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our network for plenty more great gay content to come in the future, and share this video with others. I'm Matt Haslam, this has been PBR, and have a gay day, everyone. Bye for now. And I am so sorry about my voice, it's killing me right now, and it seems like it's very fitting for this topic of why we stay silent.